California's most famous road, the $500 million highway that took 18 years to build, is collapsing into the Pacific Ocean. Not cracking, not sinking slowly, collapsing. Right now. 200-foot sections of Highway 1 are vanishing in under 30 seconds, dropping off the edge of Big Sur's cliffs like they were never there at all. And it's not happening in one spot. It's happening in over a dozen locations across 60 miles of coastline simultaneously, as if the land itself has finally decided it is done holding on. Families are trapped inside Big Sur right now, with no road in, no road out, and walls of mud 40 feet high crashing down around them. Rescue helicopters can't get through. The roads they drove in on no longer exist. But here's what has engineers in complete panic. The highway isn't randomly falling apart. It's failing section by section, mile by mile, in a pattern that looks less like weather damage and more like a countdown. And geologists just detected something moving underneath the mountains that nobody is ready to talk about yet. The road is gone. But what scientists found beneath it may be so much worse. So the real question isn't whether California can afford to rebuild Highway 1. The real question is, has the ground underneath Big Sur already made that decision for them? December 23rd, 4:15 in the morning. While most of California is asleep, a bank of sensors buried along Highway 1 near Rocky Creek Bridge starts screaming, not figuratively. The ground movement readings hitting Caltrans engineers' monitors in San Luis Obispo are so far beyond every safety threshold in the system that the engineers stare at the data for a full minute before they believe what they're seeing. The highway is shifting, not settling, not vibrating from traffic. Shifting, moving sideways and downward under the weight of water-soaked soil at a rate of 2 inches per hour. That doesn't sound like much until you understand what it means. At that speed, a road doesn't crack. It doesn't warn you. It disappears. Emergency protocols activate across the entire Central Coast within minutes, but the protocols are already too late. 5:47 a.m. The waiting ends. A 200-foot section of Highway 1 near Big Sur simply ceases to exist. It doesn't crack apart gradually. It doesn't slowly crumble toward the water. It drops, all at once, into the Pacific Ocean with a sound that residents 3 miles away describe as an earthquake. 18 years of construction, hundreds of millions of dollars, gone in less than 30 seconds. Caltrans emergency crews scramble to close access points up and down the corridor, but several tourist vehicles are already caught between the collapsed zone and intact sections of road. There is no reverse route. There is no detour. There is no way out. By 6:30 a.m., the second major collapse strikes, and this location is not random. Mud Creek, the exact same spot where a catastrophic 2017 landslide moved 6 million cubic yards of earth, the largest single landslide in California history at the time. Engineers spent 14 months and $54 million rebuilding that one section. They called it a once-in-a-century event. This morning, a 150-foot wide section at Mud Creek disappears again, taking 3 vehicles down with it into the churning ocean below. California Highway Patrol phone lines flood with calls from motorists describing the same thing over and over. The road ahead just stopped existing. Then a third collapse, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth. This is the moment the pattern becomes impossible to deny. Highway 1 is not failing from random damage scattered along the coast. It is failing systematically, section by section, mile by mile, along a 60-mile corridor being hammered by atmospheric rivers, dropping more than 6 inches per hour onto terrain that was already past its limit. By 8 a.m., Highway 1 is fully closed from Cambria to Carmel. 47 vehicles are trapped between collapse zones. Over 180 tourists and residents are stranded with 0 ground evacuation possible. Big Sur is not just cut off, it is disappearing. But here's what nobody saw coming. The highway wasn't the only thing falling apart. The highway is gone. Now the mountains start coming down. Near the Nepenthe restaurant, one of Big Sur's most iconic landmarks, perched 800 feet above the Pacific, witnesses watch a wall of mud 40 feet high come crashing down the mountainside. The sound hits before the debris does. A deep, rolling thunder that doesn't stop. What's moving down that slope isn't just mud. It is an estimated 500,000 cubic yards of saturated earth, rock, and uprooted trees. Enough material to bury several city blocks under dozens of feet of debris. And it moves fast. Faster than anyone can run. Faster than anyone can drive. Faster than anyone standing in its path has time to process what is happening. This is not a mudslide. This is a mountain dissolving. The Ventura Wilderness experiences slides, measuring 2 miles long and 300 feet wide. Let that scale sink in. 2 miles of mountainside in motion at once, not trickling, not slumping, but moving as a single churning mass toward everything below it. Pfeiffer Big Sur State Park, one of the most visited natural landmarks on the California coast, vanishes beneath an estimated 3 million cubic yards of mud. A landscape that millions of people have hiked, photographed, and loved for generations becomes something unrecognizable in under an hour. Emergency responders driving toward Big Sur describe arriving at locations they have known for years and finding nothing. Not damage, not debris they can work around. Nothing. No trees, no buildings, no roads, just vast, silent fields of gray mud stretching in every direction as far as they can see. The losses come fast. Dietjen's Big Sur Inn, a historic property that has survived decades of California storms, evacuates just minutes before a massive slide destroys every access road leading to it. Post Ranch Inn, one of the most celebrated luxury resorts on the West Coast, becomes completely unreachable by any ground route. Guests face emergency airlift by Coast Guard helicopters as the only exit. Staff at Esalen Institute find themselves entirely cut off, slides blocking Highway 1 in both directions, with no escape possible in either. Julia Pfeiffer burns. State Park suffers catastrophic slope failure near the iconic McWay Falls area. The Big Sur Volunteer Fire Brigade logs 15 major mudslide events in just 4 hours. Then the cell towers start falling. One by one, towers topple under the weight of moving earth. Communications cut out across the region. Communities go dark and silent, invisible to the outside world, unable to call for help, unable to confirm who is safe and who is not. By noon, the conclusion is unavoidable. This is not a series of separate mudslides happening in different places. This is one region being systematically buried under millions of tons of earth, all at once. But here's what nobody on the rescue teams was prepared for. What scientists detected underneath the mountains made the mudslides look like the smaller problem. The Martinez family from San Diego had booked their Big Sur cabin months in advance. 3 children under 10 years old. An elderly grandmother who depends on daily medications that are already running out. They wake to the sound the ground shaking beneath them. Not an earthquake warning, not a distant rumble. The ground under their feet, physically moving. A 40-foot wall of mud stops just 50 feet from their front door. 50 feet. The length of a school bus and a half between 3 kids and a debris flow that weighs millions of tons. They look at the roads leading out of Big Sur. Every single one is either collapsed or buried. There is no driving out. There is no walking out. There is nothing to do but wait for a helicopter that may not be able to reach them, in weather conditions that make air rescue nearly impossible, and watch the storm intensify through windows streaked with mud and rain. They are not alone. Sarah Thompson is 68 years old. She has lived in Big Sur for 4 decades. This is not a vacation property or a weekend retreat. This is every year of her adult life, every memory she has built, every room she has filled. Her home disappears under 20 feet of mud in less than 3 minutes. She escapes with her 2 dogs and nothing else. Not a photograph, not a document, not a single object that connects her to the life she spent 40 years building. She tells emergency responders that there is nothing left to go back to. Not even the ground her house once stood on. Gone. Completely gone. Big Sur Volunteer Fire Department Captain Mike Rodriguez coordinates rescues with 8 personnel. 8. His equipment sits trapped behind Highway 1 collapse zones, completely unreachable. Coast Guard helicopters push into winds hitting 90 miles per hour, beyond the safe operating limit for air rescue. Pilots cannot see. Visibility has dropped to 0. They fly entirely on instruments, navigating blind through a storm that has no interest in cooperating. In the first 12 hours, 47 people are successfully pulled out by air. That number represents an extraordinary effort under conditions that should have made any rescue impossible, and it is nowhere near enough. At Post Ranch Inn, Ventana Big Sur, and Iselin Institute combined, more than 300 employees and guests remain trapped. No resupply is possible. No rescue timeline exists. Nobody can tell them when this ends. Emergency shelters in Monterey and Carmel receive Big Sur evacuees arriving in profound shock. Children cry. Elderly residents need immediate medical care. Nobody is fully equipped to provide. Families sit in complete silence, staring at nothing, processing a loss that has no comparison point in their lives. Their homes were not burned. They were not swept away by floodwater. They were buried under walls of mud so deep that nothing will ever be recovered. But here's what none of the survivors knew yet. Underneath the mountains creating all of this destruction, scientists had just found something that made every rescue coordinator's blood run cold. At the USGS headquarters in Menlo Park, the lights have been on all night. Dr. Sarah Chen, lead geologist, sits in front of soil saturation data coming in from monitoring stations across the Santa Lucia Mountains and reads numbers that should not exist. Not numbers that are high, not numbers that are concerning, numbers that are, by every established model of geological science, impossible under conditions that were considered completely normal just 48 hours ago. The Santa Lucia Mountains are holding 400% more water than their maximum stability threshold. Not 40% over, not 100% over, 400%. That is not a mountain range absorbing heavy rainfall. That is a mountain range that has stopped being solid. The mountains are not just wet, they are dissolving. To understand what that actually means, consider the weight. A single cubic meter of water-saturated soil weighs over 2 tons. Now multiply that across billions of cubic meters of mountainous terrain. Every slope, every ridge, every hillside pressing down on geology that was never engineered to carry this load. And the math stops being abstract and starts being terrifying. The Santa Lucia Mountains are not holding their shape anymore. They are collapsing under their own weight, slowly enough that you cannot see it happening, fast enough that the instruments never stop moving. Then UC Berkeley seismologists find something worse. Unusual ground vibration patterns are appearing in the data beneath Big Sur. Not seismic activity from a fault line shifting. Something different. The immense weight of billions of tons of saturated earth is triggering microseismic events in the underlying geology. Tiny internal fractures multiplying through the bedrock as the pressure from above exceeds what the rock underneath can absorb. The ground is not just sliding toward the ocean. It is shaking itself apart from the inside. Satellite measurements confirm what ground sensors are detecting. Hillsides across multiple square miles are moving simultaneously at 3 to 5 inches per hour. That rate of movement has never been recorded anywhere in California's entire geological history. Not during the 1994 Northridge earthquake. Not during any previous storm event on record. Never. Dr. Michael Torres at UC San Diego's Scripps Institution puts the scale into words that land like a punch. The 2017 Mud Creek landslide moved 6 million cubic yards of earth. At the time, engineers called it a once-in-a-century event. The current slides have already exceeded that total volume, and the atmospheric rivers feeding the disaster show absolutely no signs of weakening. Those atmospheric rivers are carrying water vapor equivalent to 15 Mississippi rivers flowing through the sky at the same time. Climate models never predicted storm systems of this intensity arriving before 2040. They arrived in 2024, 16 years early, catching scientists, engineers, and every level of emergency planning completely unprepared. If that scale of miscalculation leaves you speechless, every subscriber on this channel is automatically entered in our monthly branded hoodie giveaway. Details are in the description. But here's what nobody in that Menlo Park lab wanted to say out loud. If the geology is already this unstable, what does it actually cost to fix it? Start with a number that puts everything in perspective. The 2017 Mud Creek landslide was one collapse, one location, one section of road. It took 14 months to rebuild and cost $54 million. Engineers celebrated when it reopened. They called it a triumph of modern infrastructure repair under impossible conditions. The highway was back. The crisis was over. What is happening right now is not one collapse. It is not two collapses. Caltrans engineers, surveying the 60-mile corridor between Cambria and Carmel, count more than 15 major failure sites, and when they deliver their initial damage estimate to state budget officials, the room goes quiet. Repairs will exceed $500 million. That number assumes the ground stops moving. It has not stopped moving. But the dollar figure is only the beginning of the financial reckoning. Big Sur's entire economy runs through Highway 1. Not mostly, not primarily, entirely. There is no alternate route connecting Big Sur to the outside world. There is no backup road that takes over when the main one fails. When Highway 1 closes, Big Sur does not slow down economically. It does not operate at reduced capacity. The region generates $1.2 billion in tourism revenue every single year, and every single dollar of it depends on that road being open. The moment the highway closes, that revenue does not decrease. It drops to zero. Christmas week alone typically delivers $80 million in tourism spending to the Central Coast. Hotels booked solid, restaurants packed, art galleries full, every dollar of it gone, not redirected, not postponed, simply gone, the moment the road stopped existing. Central Coast communities that depend on Highway 1 for basic supplies are now receiving emergency provisions by helicopter at 10 times normal transportation costs. Restaurants that have served Big Sur for decades sit empty, supplies rotting in kitchens that staff cannot even reach. Small hotels representing generations of family investment face bankruptcy. Not because their buildings were destroyed, but because without the road, there are no guests. No guests means no revenue. No revenue means no survival. The agricultural losses compound everything. Farms isolated by the collapse watch crops rot in fields with no way to move them to market. Dairy operations cannot ship milk. Organic produce operations see entire harvests decompose. The regional food supply chain collapses not because the farms themselves were destroyed, but because the transportation network connecting them to the world no longer exists. Insurance claims in the Big Sur region alone exceed $3 billion. And beyond the property lines, the ecological damage extends the financial reckoning into territory that no dollar amount can fully capture. Millions of tons of sediment pour into Pacific marine sanctuaries. Kelp forests suffocate under debris. Endangered species lose critical habitat that took centuries to develop and cannot be replaced at any price. But here's what makes the financial picture truly devastating. The economic collapse is built on a foundation that engineers have been quietly worried about for over 100 years. Highway 1 was never supposed to be permanent. Construction began in 1919 through terrain that the engineers hired to build it described, in their own reports, as impossible to stabilize permanently. Not difficult, not challenging, impossible. It took 18 years to complete. Convict labor carved the road from sheer cliffs above the Pacific, using hand tools and dynamite, cutting through geology that pushed back at every single stage of construction. When it finally opened in 1937, California celebrated it as a triumph of human determination over natural obstacles. What nobody said out loud was that the obstacles had not been defeated. They had simply been temporarily managed. The history of Highway 1 is a history of collapse and repair that never actually ends. The 1983 storms triggered major landslides that closed the highway for months and cost $50 million to fix. The 1998 El Niño brought catastrophic failures requiring $100 million in repairs. The 2017 Mud Creek Slide, the once-in-a-century event, took 14 months and $54 million to rebuild a single section. Each time, California rebuilt. Each time, engineers declared the road restored. Each time, the geology waited. The 2024 Christmas floods have now exceeded every one of those historical disasters combined, and the rain has not stopped. Caltrans identifies 15 additional high-risk sections, showing imminent collapse indicators beyond those that have already failed. Some of these sections, engineers warn internally, may be permanently unsafe for reconstruction, regardless of how much money is spent. The debate inside engineering circles is no longer about cost. It is about geological reality. Should Highway 1 be rebuilt at all? And if the answer is no, what does that mean for every family, every business, and every community whose entire existence depends on that road? But here's what makes that question almost impossible to answer. The disaster is nowhere near finished. The disaster is not over. It is about to get worse. The National Weather Service issues forecasts that send emergency planners into immediate crisis mode. Another atmospheric river is approaching the California coast, and this one carries even more moisture than the system's currently devastating Big Sur. Computer models show it making landfall in 48 hours. The forecast calls for 10 to 20 additional inches of rainfall across a region where the ground is already holding 400% more water than it can physically contain. Hillsides that cannot absorb a single additional drop of rain face guaranteed further collapse. The question emergency managers cannot answer is a simple one. How do you evacuate areas where the roads no longer exist? USGS issues a rare extreme landslide danger warning for the entire Santa Lucia mountain range. Satellite imagery reveals dozens of additional hillsides showing critical failure indicators beyond those that have already collapsed. The ground is not stabilizing. It is waiting. Climate scientists find no comfort in the broader pattern. Atmospheric rivers are intensifying faster than any model predicted. The entire Pacific coast from Washington state to Mexico faces the same geological vulnerability. Infrastructure designed for 20th century weather is simply inadequate for a climate reality arriving decades ahead of every schedule. Europe is flooding simultaneously. The Arctic is recording temperatures 20 degrees above normal. Big Sur is not an isolated tragedy. It is one data point in a global pattern accelerating beyond every projection scientists confidently made just 5 years ago. Climate models placed storms of this intensity in the year 2040. They arrived in 2024, 16 years early, and nobody was ready. 1 week after the first section of Highway 1 fell into the Pacific, Big Sur remains severed from the outside world in over a dozen locations. Engineering assessments arriving from firms across the country deliver the same conclusion in different language. Months to assess, years to rebuild, and some sections may never be rebuilt safely at all. The crisis phase is ending. What replaces it is not recovery. It is a reckoning. Some residents say they will return regardless. This is their home. This is where their lives exist. But the ground beneath them is not the same ground it was 2 weeks ago, and the storms that reshaped it are not finished arriving. If this story reminded you that the ground beneath any of us can shift without warning, grab your free disaster preparedness toolkit. The link is in the description. The road collapsed into the Pacific, but the questions it left behind have no bottom.